Hey everyone, it's Melody with Design by Melody. I'm actually here with a photo organization project for you today. So I'm going to go through the steps of this project and we're going to dive right in. The very first step is to gather your supplies. So let me tell you a little bit of a backstory about this project. So if you've been with me a while, you know that I was doing a family history book there for a while. Well, I talked to my sisters and my mom because my dad's already passed away, so I can't ask him. But I talked to my sisters and my mom, and we talked about a couple different things that would be interesting to include in there. And one of them was a few pictures from our childhood. So I asked both my sisters and my mom to see if they had any photos just kind of sitting around that were easily accessible that may have been from when we were younger. Well, my younger sister immediately said, "Hey, I have a box full of photos." And the next day, this is while I was visiting for Christmas last year, I believe. The next day, she shows up with a cardboard box full of photos. Now, I took the box and I promised her that I was going to return it to her, but in a very different state. That it was not going to come back to her in a cardboard box. So this is the project that I've kind of created. So in the process of going through her photos and organizing them, and these are like random photos, some from when we were very young, some from maybe just 5 years ago, some from, different trips that we went on as family members, some from trips that she went on just with like her Girl Scout troop, a whole bunch of different things. And so I decided to take these photos. First of all, I got rid of the offensive cardboard box. It was like a giant cardboard box. And I got she also had this photo album, which as you can see, the photos don't really fit in there because there's photos at different sizes. So that was one of them. But as you can see, I got all the photos. And then I also purchased this just photo storage box for any photos that don't make it into the albums. I wasn't sure how many photos there were truly here in general, but I knew that I needed another album other than just this one. And I didn't think I was actually going to be keeping this album that I'm taking these photos out of right now, but I do end up salvaging it. I do take out a bunch of the different pages that are just all ripped and torn up, but I do end up salvaging the photo album itself, and then I purchased that other photo album that you saw with the gold polka dots on it, and I got that from Walmart. Now, this is not actually going to be scrapbooking. It is truly just photo organization and going through what I can find and all of that. And it's just kind of a nice little project. So the whole reason that I'm going through these photos and going through this project is to find photos that I want to include in our family history project that I was working on. Plus, also, if I find any other photos that I would like to scrapbook and include in my regular family scrapbooks, then I will pull those out as well. So I'm kind of doing two different things at the same time. I'm organizing her photos, but I am also going through the photos to see what else I might actually want to pull out. So the very first thing after I gathered my supplies is I start to take the photos out of the way that they're organized, which is not really organized, to be honest with you. And I'm kind of trimming up these photos as I go. So some of the photos, like these in particular, were school photos of her friends from when she was younger. I'm trimming those up to make sure that they're cut properly. And then some of these larger photos are actually going to be cut down. And if it was a photo that was printed, say on a home printer that was just cut out, I'm also going through those to see if they need to be trimmed to make sure that they are, have straight edges and squared corners and things like that. Now, I am roughly starting to sort the photos into different categories, and I will very much fine-tune this later, but for the moment, I am just taking them all out and sorting through them and making sure that they are cut properly. Now, I sped this up a little bit for you so it's not quite so long and time intensive, but this project took me I would say probably overall about 3 hours. And I literally went photo by photo. And the very first day that I pulled it out and kind of started to look at them, Kaylin sat with me on the floor for about an hour and just looked through photos. We just looked through all the different photos. And that was kind of before I really started the project. It was more so just looking to see what we're dealing with here. Now, as I'm kind of going through these photos and making stacks, I'm kind of making note of the different things. So there are a bunch of different categories that I actually end up including in this photo album. So there's actually going to be 2 different photo albums, and each one will have categories. And this is where I'm actually starting to determine which categories. And I truly just made these categories based on the photos that I was coming across. So there are a couple groups of photos of particular events, such as when I was it a freshman? I guess it was a freshman in college, and my older sister was a senior in college. My younger sister's 5 years younger than me, so she still would have been in middle school. But our parents went on a trip. And so my younger sister, both my older sister and I went to the same college. So my younger sister came and spent, I think it was a week with us up here in Raleigh. And so there's a couple different things that she went to do, especially with my older sister because she stayed with her in her apartment. But there's different things that she had done. I think it was as a freshman. Maybe I was still in high school. I can't remember. But anyways, there's a bunch of photos from that event. There's also a bunch of photos from pets that we had. And there's a bunch of photos from, both sides of the families, like my dad's side of the family and my mom's side of the family. There's also photos from a cruise that Jill went on. There's just a bunch of different things. So I've got them all organized here with labels. Now, the next step is actually putting them in the albums. Now, again, this was a very daunting task. I wasn't exactly sure how long this was going to take, but I just kind of started. And I roughly, because I had just looked through the photos and sorted them, I kind of had an idea of what photos I had. So I am simply just sliding them in. I'm not being too picky about what I'm doing, but as I was sorting the photos, I kind of made sure like all the winter photos are together and maybe all the pool photos are together and all the different trip photos are together and things like that. And then this is where I'm actually going to start pulling some photos out and setting them aside for me to actually make copies of. And this is where I kind of ran into the problem of, some of these photos are different sizes. So I'm actually going to grab some Project Life cards from my stash, just some random ones. None of them really have any rhyme or reason to them, but I'm just going to kind of just put a tad bit of adhesive on the back of them and just glue them to these 4x6 cards. And Kaylin came to visit to see what I was doing, which is why the album started flipping up and down there, because he wanted to see what I was doing. But I just went ahead and then put those smaller photos matted on some 4x6 cards, and that is just so that the photos don't float around. I want to make sure that this is as neat as possible and that it stays as neat as possible, and that it kind of stays in these categories. It doesn't have to stay in these categories forever, but the whole purpose of this was to create a usable photo album that can actually be, flipped through and viewed and enjoyed, instead of it just being all thrown in a box or in an album that's kind of falling apart, And this took me quite a while, but I just turned on some TV on my iPad and watched a different show, and just to kind of, go through the process. And I absolutely loved looking at all of these photos. I think it was so much fun to kind of reminisce about some of the things, try to remember some other things that I could not seem to place. And then also, just to look at how young everyone is in the photos. I did not necessarily stay in chronological order, but I grouped, the different events together, as I said. Now, this stack of photos here that I have to the right are the ones that I'm going to copy before I put them in her album, and those are the tabs off to the right side of the album. And then the tabs off to the top are the ones that are actually the different categories. And then here are all the remaining photos, and I'm going to see if they're going to fit in this second album. So the second part of this step is to then pull out the second album and see what I can fit in there. just kind of going through the exact same process. This was really fun for me. Now, this is not new. There are other people who have done photo organization projects and showed their process. This is just a project that I took on last December, and now that we're in, mid-November, I'm kind of actually going through and doing it. So it's been on my floor in my craft room for almost 12 months. And the way that I do my projects, when I have a big project like this, it really wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be, but it felt like such a daunting task. When I have a big project like this, I keep it on my floor in my craft room, and then I kind of have it sitting there and have it out ready for me to work on. So eventually we're going to be moving here soon, and I wanted to get those projects done, and so I just kind of started flipping through them to see what I could do. Now the last part of this is to actually create tabs. So I have this Ellie Studio tab die, and I pulled out some just random scraps in my scrap bin. Now it's all the same paper for all the tabs, but I put two papers together back to back and then die cut it. So I have a front tab and a back tab because they are two separate pieces. So I've already done the first album and put the tabs on. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how I'm doing this with the second one. And I went ahead, there's the tab die from Ellie's Studio, and then I had the scrap paper from my stash, and then I have my Brother P-Touch label maker here, and I'm just kind of creating some labels to put on these tabs. So the other album, I have the tabs on, let's see, I have the tabs on the side, and then this one I have to put the tabs on the top. And the reason I had to change the placement of the tabs is because of the how the page protectors opened, because I didn't want to enclose photos in the slots. I wanted to still be able to move those if we needed to. If somebody wanted to take a photocopy of that photo, make a copy of it, they could still slide it out of the pocket and do that. Now I'm just using my red line tape here to put adhesive on these tabs. Now I am putting adhesive all over the tabs. Now for the back piece of the tab that's matching this, you only have to put adhesive on the bottom because the top part will be touching this other tab. So the bottom row of adhesive right there is going to be stuck onto the page protector itself, and then the top row is just going to stick it to the opposite side of the tab. So I only have 4 tabs in this particular album. I think the other one, like I said, I think it has 7 different categories, but I was very pleased with the fact that I was able to get all of those photos back into this album and into the new album that I purchased. Now, the photo box that you saw originally still has photos in it. Those are just photos. In the process of going through everything, I took out photos that may have, not actually been well focused or really dark and you couldn't tell what it is. And there's a pile of photos that I want my sister to look at and determine if she wants to keep them or not. I did not throw any photos away at all, but there are probably 40 photos that could be tossed, but I want her to make that decision since these are her photos. And also there were a couple different photos that were too big to fit in the photo albums. So I also put those in that photo box. And then so she now has 2 complete photo albums and then a photo box. And that is so much better than this ginormous cardboard box, and it was a pretty large cardboard box that I think had been sitting in their garage. So I just feel like this is such a better way to have the photos. I am very pleased with it. I do have my copies that I am making. I think there are probably 25 photos that I actually copied out of all of these photos that are in these albums. I don't know how many photos there ended up being, but there ended up being a ton of photos, to be honest with you. But I am very pleased with how this project turned out. So I'm just going to give you kind of an overview here of these tabs. These are the ones that are across the top. And then also I have the other album, which is the tabs that are across the side. And they're different size albums, but they both will be really nice to be able to flip through and just enjoy the different photos. And then after I make my own copies, they'll go back in the albums where I've notated with these yellow sticky notes. So that completes my project today. I hope you guys are inspired to kind of tackle a project that you may have set aside for a while. I appreciate all of your support and your love and just for visiting me here today on my YouTube channel. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and I will be back soon with a scrapbook layout for you. All right, guys, bye.